Hello, people. It's been a very interesting week on the stocks. I've had quite a few fairly large moves this week, but actually only ended up about 3,000 down, which I didn't think was too bad. I'm sort of come to the some of the later ones, some of the larger ones in the invest account. But yeah, in here it's sort of broadly the same. Overall, the blockchain, Argo and Hive are down a bit, but the gold and silver miners doing really well. Pan American Silver sort of really picked up. Freeport McMoran sort of continuing in the green, 46% up on that now. We'll start to probably consider some of these as we sort of get closer to the June Argo new Texas site. If it's sort of staying around here, I may consider taking some profit and putting even more of that into Argo. I know I'm concentrating my risk really quite high on that now, but yeah, still fairly happy with it. I'll keep an eye on the Argo sort of updates and just sort of checking whether they are okay financially. But yeah, could potentially mean more dilution if crypto stays low, but not sure. We'll see. So looking at Trading212, barely actually changed in the ISA for the week, which is quite unusual. Considering Argo, the ARCPI is down slightly, not really doing a lot with that for now. Some of the REITs are sort of slightly up, which is pretty good, just offsetting a little bit of loss. Argo, so as I say, 12% down, sort of took a bit of a drop on Friday with sort of some bullish dollar news. The non-farm payrolls was a fairly good number for the US, so the dollar rose, and that's sort of normally bad for Bitcoin. And people just aren't taking, it's not taking too much for them to want to sell off Argo at the moment. So, yeah, I think reasonable price, but we'll see. Wondering if they may have to dilute to finish off the Texas site. The Bitcoin ETP, I think, probably closed before some of the Bitcoin sell-off. So yeah, that's up on the week, but I wouldn't really trust that going forward. Sentiment, pretty good. Another one, any of the gold miners really are doing pretty well. DLR, 1%. Yeah, First Majestic sort of up, but not really too much just yet. Silver sort of starting to show some signs of life. The rest of the REITs aren't doing a huge amount. Sylvania's been a bit up and down. Yeah, but none of that's really moved a huge amount. Probably best to come to the invest side. So there's been some fair moves in here, and I've done a bit of trading, which I don't normally do. So yeah, the invested amount sort of changes quite a bit here, but I haven't sort of deposited or withdrawn anything. It's just taken profit and reinvesting. So I'm down about 4,000 in here, which obviously not great, but I've had some fair moves. Archer Daniels Midland, so up 5% on the week, and I'm up sort of 60 odd percent now. So in sort of two amounts this week at sort of 70, I did do a little bit at 78, and sort of 82, I've sold half the position. 21 shares, I think, and then 20 shares. So just sort of feel like this has sort of done what I was hoping it to do largely. Sort of looking at, I think, forward PE of about 16 now, which, considering sort of what is on offer elsewhere, I sort of always said when some of these stocks are sort of level on valuation with some sort of higher growth stocks, then I would sort of make the switch. I think Archer Daniels are looking at sort of $5.19 earnings per share this year, and sort of $5.20 next year. So there's no growth, sort of 0.2% growth expected on the next year. So yeah, I kind of, unless anything sort of goes drastically wrong and pushes sort of commodity prices up further and further and further, sort of think Archer Daniels may be getting towards the end of this sort of bullish move. So I will come back to what I've redeployed that into. ASOS 15% down on the week nearly. I guess that I haven't really seen all that much news that would cause this, really. I mean, they've sort of had, they're a low margin company anyway. Inflation sort of pressures, I guess, just compresses them down to pretty much a no margin company. So yeah, not really looking to buy the dip on this, despite being sort of 46% down. Yeah, would kind of just like to see how this plays out, really. But it's a fair loss. What else have we got? Broadcom slightly up. They had some really good set of earnings results, so they have done well. Glencore 5% up, was higher, but has sort of slightly dropped back down. 50% up. Really should have bought more a while ago. Sort of said I was bullish. So they're sort of copper, zinc and nickel. They're one of the largest nickel miners, but it doesn't sort of contribute a huge amount to the revenue. But all three sort of took a major spike up in the last week. So Glencore doing really well. All of I'll sort of show you all the miners are doing pretty well. So yes, amongst some of my trading this week was more Himax. So it's now one of the larger positions. 530 shares. Just sort of, as I've sort of said before, they're in sort of display technology. Their last earnings look really, really good. They're hoping for automotive sector to be sort of the largest contributor to their revenue. Seems like every new car you get into has got a giant tablet or sort of a huge amount of built-in screen real estate on show. Heads-up displays, Himax are also involved in. The whole sort of Tesla EV type thing just seems to have an abundance of screens. And then you've got VR and augmented reality for the future, sort of headsets and that sort of thing. So I think forward PE of 5, just crazy good looking company, really. Good balance sheet. So I would say I've gone big, really, for me on this sort of stock. What else have we got? Legal and General, I'm struggling a little bit with this one. Been reading the news and not seen a huge amount. I mean, they'll be sort of dumping certain assets in certain countries to do with the war, but didn't think this would affect them all that much. Looking a reasonable yield now, but not really something that I'm sort of looking to buy. Sort of think there's better value elsewhere. I think if I was moving sort of all of the crypto into the portfolio, then I would be buying quite a bit of that. But yeah, if I'm just sort of rebalancing, not quite at the moment. Lennar hasn't moved too much. And yes, so Lockheed Martin, 12% up on the week. No prizes for guessing what this is about. But yeah, I think this is sort of being based off announcements that Germany, I think it was, looking to up their military spending and sort of expectation that other countries would follow. But it's debatable how much Lockheed would really get out of this. I mean, the earnings sort of for the next year or two look good, but not tremendously growing. And I'm just a little bit sort of wary about how much Lockheed really would get out of this, to be honest. They're now sort of, unless the earnings do rocket up, they're trading at like think it was 16, 17 times 2023's earnings. So yeah, just seemed a bit much. So I sold a bit last week, and I've trimmed another 3.5 shares. So yeah, down to 6.5 shares now. Could be the wrong move, but we'll see. And I put a bit more into Meta platforms. So yeah, I sort of laid out my thoughts on this. They're getting lower earnings because of the Apple restrictions, sort of advertising restrictions and that sort of thing. But I think people are really putting sort of little to no stock into the metaverse investment that Facebook are making, or Meta are making. I sort of don't really see it as that way. The sort of world that they're building looks reasonably good for sort of younger audience. And then sort of got the VR headsets. I think they're going to do well. They seem to be very well priced, and there isn't a huge amount of competition at the moment. So yeah, I like them sort of around here, and at the same sort of PE as sort of Archer Daniels and Lockheed. I think I would be a buyer. So I've upped that. Micron took quite a drop, but that's no surprise for Micron. It's very up and down. Nintendo sort of bucking the trend this week, so that's been quite handy, 5% up. Porsche, yeah, so Porsche and VW have been all over the place at the moment, sort of had a bit of a rise on the expectations of the Porsche IPO. But yeah, they've sort of had, I don't know if you saw the news, a ship with a number of Volkswagen sort of luxury cars, Bentleys I think it was, and sort of Bugattis. The ship caught fire, so they were a bit worried, and it did eventually sink. So I take it all the cars are lost. Presume they would be insured, but it's just causing a huge amount of hassle. And then you've got sort of plants. I think the plant in Germany has sort of paused out of sort of sympathy for the events in Ukraine. And I think sort of their exposure to Russia, the sort of sales in Russia, they're not going to be selling anything to Russia anymore. So it's just a lot of negative pressure, really. But yeah, I have taken the opportunity to, not in Porsche, I've sort of put a little bit into Volkswagen instead. The sort of IPO seems like it's going to happen later on, but Volkswagen seem to have been sort of dropping more than Porsche have. People are thinking Porsche are going to get the better end of the deal, but I'm still fairly happy for Volkswagen, so I bought into that a little. Process 12.7% down, so I put a reasonable amount of the sort of Lockheed and Archer Daniels money into Process. Yeah, they've had a bit of a drop from Tencent, but they seem to have detached from Tencent. They're dropping quite a bit more. They've got an investment in a Russian social media site, which is sort of a fairly small investment. It's like less than 1% of their portfolio, and they've sort of been suspended. Shares have been suspended, but I mean, with the greatest respect, I don't really care about sort of that small of an investment in the portfolio. I mean, most people buy this at the moment still just for 10-cent exposure. So to be this far down, considering even most of the sort of the non-10-cent investment is sort of India and technology companies and sort of education, that sort of thing, seemed a little bit strange. All of that's still fine by the looks of it. So yeah, I took the took the opportunity to buy a little. I think I did buy at sort of the 50s. I think I bought on Thursday, so taken a fair drop since then, but yeah, not too bad. Renault have dropped tremendously, 24%. I'm not looking to buy this one because they do actually do quite a lot of business in Russia, so that's not too good. But yeah, sort of kind of unanticipated when you buy the stock. You're not really expecting this sort of thing, so yeah, just have to let this one ride out, I think, and see if they recover. Wasn't a huge position. Rio Tinto, 6.8% up on the week. Again, sort of iron ore doing pretty well. They do a fair bit of aluminium as well. That's doing well, and copper. No surprise, basically all the commodities are up. So Rio Tinto looking good. 7% up on them, but some fairly big dividends. So that's overall quite a bit better than it's really showing. Shell, interesting one, 8% down on the week. I think this is, again, sort of having to sell some investments linked to Russia and sort of exposure to Russia, maybe a little bit of lost revenue. But yeah, the oil price is sort of touching, I think, it did touch $120 this week, and I think sits at about 118 now on Brent. And gas sort of, comparatively high as well. So they're going to be presumably making an absolute fortune at the moment. So yeah, I would expect this to sort of recover fairly well and probably be going to new highs for the last couple of years. So yeah, and they can hopefully push that money into. I think they really need to start sort of just to get the PEs and the sort of sentiment back. They probably need to be basically saying, yes, we're making a lot of money, but we're going to push the load of this into sort of renewable energy and something a bit better than oil and gas, because they're not looking very good. Just sort of anecdotally, people at work have been sort of slating them for the articles coming out that they're making a great deal of profit, which fairly obvious, but yeah, no one was sort of feeling sorry for them when oil was sort of $30 back in sort of early 2020 when the pandemic started. People are saying tax them now, give them a windfall tax. Again, no one was saying give them a tax rebate when they were losing a fortune, so seems a little bit short term. But Stellantis. So I sort of had a good look through the reports for sort of exposure to Russia and Ukraine. I didn't see a huge amount. There's very little sales, and I'm not aware from what I saw of much of any production in Russia or Ukraine. So yeah, 21% down in the week. I chose to add 150 shares, I think it was. So yeah, 6.5% overall down on this. Was in profit, but looking really, really good going forward. The sort of electric transition is going slower than expected, but they've got some sort of interesting sectors still. They're doing some really sort of good business in South America from the looks of it, still on ICE cars from the looks of it, but that's okay. Doing quite well in commercial vehicles as well. The sort of electric commercial vehicles still doing well, so they've got multiple avenues for sort of growth and still getting a huge amount of profit. So I think their market cap is about 4 times annual profit from their last report, and they've got sort of a lot less debt than the others. I think they've still got more cash than they have debt. So yeah, just don't really understand this, and sort of almost getting more bullish on them than Volkswagen now, even if they're a little bit behind on the electric. But it's just so many brands. 14 brands, I think there is in Stellantis, and sort of some of them are doing very well. They own Peugeot, and Peugeot sort of seem to be doing quite well in the electric vehicles. So, yeah, sort of almost seems like a mini car-based ETF, which could have some really good individual brands in it. So I bought a fair bit of that. TSMC, 5% down. I think this is, again, sort of largely exposure and sort of chip issues relating to the pandemic. Nothing too much. Taylor Wimpey, down a bit. Tyson Foods, pretty flat for the week. Again, sort of, it's been rising and been doing sort of really well for the last few months, but valuations don't seem horrendous, to be honest. The sort of earnings have increased a great deal, and the price has increased pretty fairly to that, really. So not one that I'm looking to sort of take profit on, similar to the others, unless it runs up crazy amounts. Vale, 12.9% up, pretty good. Again, sort of similar to Rio, really. Iron ore looking good, copper looking good, and nickel looking good. So Vale does well. So never got a large position in this, unfortunately, but 12% up now from being sort of quite heavily in the red. Anyone who sort of bought those lows is doing pretty well. Viatris had some absolutely terrible earnings, so that's not looking too good. But yeah, I think they're still sort of going through this transition, the sort of merger that they've made. It was always going to take a fair while, so I'm just leaving this one for now. It wasn't a huge position, so nothing too much there. And then, yeah, Volkswagen sort of topped up, so hell of a rocky week for sort of various positions, but yeah, that's the reason for diversification. So $3,000 down on the whole portfolio is sort of 1.3% or something. So I'm happy with that. We'll see where we go. So leave your thoughts in the comments below, and like and subscribe. See you soon.